basically goes like this, around and around for like a minute, and then boom, then it happens. So this is Whitney Kaiser, senior editor of ClearanceJobs.com, joined by Sandy Lawrence, who wrote the book club pick that we selected this month for Clearance Jobs. The month of February, we went with the transitioned veteran, which included, if I remember correctly, 53 individual stories of veterans who had transitioned out of the military, and it discussed that. So thank you so much, Sandy, for your book and for taking the time to chat with us today.
Well, Lindy, it's a pleasure to be here on a Friday afternoon. I can't think of a better way to roll into the weekend besides talking about the book. So
the last weekend of February, which is like, I cannot believe.
I know, unbelievable.
Time flies during a pandemic.
Yes.
So talk to me about kind of what led you to write The Transitioned Veteran, and just kind of how you came up with the idea, or maybe how the stories came together.
Okay, well, you know, my book partner Jay Hicks and myself have written several other transitioning military books, and one of the things that we realized is at the end of each chapter of those books, we would kind of highlight one veteran specific story relevant to that career industry, whether it was project management or logistics. And we got very, very good reviews and comments about, oh, you know, that was so insightful, really appreciated, you know, that story being told. And a few years later, I was asked, since my career background is portfolio program and project management, I was asked to participate in a woman's book on that subject. It was a worldwide book, and she framed it around a series of questions that were impacting women. And that book was really well received. And so then I started putting two and two together, and I thought, you know, this would really be an interesting book, because everybody's always looking for mentors or coaches when you're transitioning. So I thought, you know, why don't I just get, you know, 53 guys and gals who are ready to do that and tell their story. And so I collected 53 and set it for them to answer or to share their journey of transition through 12 questions that I came up with. And so that's how the book came to be. And it's been going great since then.
I love it. Well, Jill, our editor at Clearance Jobs, also does a shout out to Jay Hicks, who is a Clearance Jobs contributor. So thank you for mentioning him. So you can check out the writing on the Clearance Jobs news site.
That's right.
Yeah, I think you talk about the mentorship piece, and that's key. And I think it's worth noting that we, you know, kind of announced this book, and the book club had kind of taken a bit of a hiatus in January. I know everybody else thinks that they're reading in January. I was just too plumb exhausted to read in January. But we had 20 people request a copy of the book.
Yeah,
and I think that just shows, I think we kind of tend to think, oh, you know, there's so many transition resources out there, but there is still that desire for more, and there's still folks are looking for information. So what's kind of maybe like the biggest kind of maybe gap between that, you know, hey, I'm transitioning, and then getting the information that you need? Because it seems like there's so much out there, but there's still a desire for it.
Right. Well, I think you hit it on the mark, Lindy. When, you know, the thing is that we have the internet, and the internet's full of great resources. We have resources available through huge nonprofits that are helping with transitioning military. We now have companies that have dedicated hiring groups focused on hiring military specific men and women. And it's just so many great resources. The problem becomes, where do I start? I mean, you know, if you step back into the shoes of somebody who's transitioning, they go, okay, well, I have 12, 18 months to go. You know, I'm talking to TAP, and I understand my internal processes to step away and retire from this position. But, you know, what do I do to go and find a job? How do I speak to my successes, are they transferable? How do I write a resume? How do I speak about myself when I've been in this lifelong team environment, and it's never been about me. It's about, making sure the last guy comes along and we get through it together. So there's it's hard to sometimes find out where the starting point is for people. And I think, what I've tried to do with this book, and as well as my other books, but it encapsulates 53 automatic mentors for somebody. You might not want to consider them all mentors, but they all have stories to tell. And I can almost bet anybody who reads this book is going to find 2 or 3 stories that have compelling parts to them that say, give them that aha moment where they go, oh, well, this is how they address that, or this is what I need to look out for. And so through that, with the consolidation of 53 stories, I think it's just a really great reference book. It's very service agnostic. I did all 4 services. I did not get Coast Guard, but I got service members, I got enlisted, I got, I got the whole thing. And so far, it's really been a good touch point for a lot of people to just say, hey, this is making sense to me. And I also, at the front of my book, did a synopsis because I read all the stories and I was really excited, but I found some themes that were common through all the stories. And so I wrote those up in a section I called Observation and Demographics, which, had some fun pictures and things like that. But it really helped summarize some lessons learned and things that people would do over again instead of reading, every story front to back. But, the format's nice. I would say that everybody so it's not like you have to, read a bunch of upfront material to understand what the next chapter of the next person's talking about. You can just take, whoever you want to look at and read it, on a train ride if you have the ebook. So it's just a good support system, and it gives people, like I said, automatic mentorships, because I can tell you that if there were anyone who wanted to reach out to one of the 53, they could certainly get on LinkedIn and reach out to them. So yeah. It's good.
I love what you say about books being mentors. I'm going to tell my counselor that books being mentors, people. Books are people. It's like I'm building my life around the fact
That's right. Well, everybody needs a mentor, but you also need a coach. You need that cheerleader behind you to, say you're doing the right thing. And that can still be your small military group, but you really want to go beyond that community and learn to reach out to other mentoring or other network groups, such as PMI organizations or other certification groups. If you're moving to a new area, you want to reach out to groups in that community and find out what's going on and what kind of companies are in that geographic region. So this kind of gives an automatic extended network from a military perspective, and that can be a first step for many people.
And I love that too, because I think you want to be paired. I think there's a tendency to find a mentor and to look and say, hey, my mentor needs to be someone who looks like me, in the sense of who had my MOS or who did my job. But sometimes you might not want to follow that exact path. So maybe the best mentor isn't someone who served in your military branch and was your MOS and was your same gender and had your exact life. So your better mentor might be somebody who brings a completely different perspective.
Right.
Because you guys might already think the same. You need the guy who doesn't think the way that you think.
That's right. Because you are leaving one family and moving to almost another orphan family, a brand new family. And you have to make the right decisions on who that family is going to be, because They're going to deal with risks differently. They're going to deal with you differently. They're going to deal with their strategy. And, and you're bringing along your family, whether it's yourself or it's a family with kids, you're bringing them along. So you need to make sure that you make that right decision and do the due diligence on finding that next family or that next company that you're going to join up with, because it is another family that you're joining. You're leaving the military family. Now you need to move to another family. So there you go.
And I love that you brought up the observation and demographics section, because I was going to discuss that. I think as someone we put together a lot of infographics, Jill and I, so I think this is near to our heart, and almost read kind of like that, like an infographic kind of introduction to the rest of the book.
It is.
And I think it was really interesting. So talk about some of those themes that you did pick up on that you wanted to include in that section that you put at the beginning.
Well, of course, at the beginning, you have the obvious breakdowns of the men and the women. I think it's interesting that we had a lot of women respond, although I am a woman myself, and being a DoD contractor, I reached out to many of my female comrades in arm who could help me find out and get people to participate from a female perspective. So, it's that kind of stuff. I think from a services standpoint, I did a shotgun effort out on LinkedIn. And I think I'm also very lucky, since I was in 2 joint commands at SOCOM and at CENTCOM as a DoD contractor. It was regardless of the service. It's truly a joint command. So I was dealing with, everyone for every service. And so they have their little tics and behaviors, but it's pretty cool to, to read through their stories and say, oh, that's a Marine, or that's an Air Force officer. You really can start getting the vibe of, how they've been brought up through their service efforts themselves. I did some enlisted versus officer. I did some degrees and certifications, because as an advocate for PMI, which is the Project Management Institute, Jay's in my first book was transitioning as a project manager out into the workforce, because as a project manager, I think everybody in the military can lay claim to the fact that they've all done projects in some way or another. Shoot, if we're parents, we've done projects. We get kids up and to the school bus every day, right? So we have to make dinner plans. That's a project. We have to figure out how to balance our checkbook. That's another project. So I had been doing that for years as far as advocating. And what became a big question from all the active duty that I mentored through this whole process was the area of certification, because I think mastery of terminology really helps show that you're willing to not only you're willing to master something new, but then you can also be able to speak to somebody on a baseline of terminology that's normalized in the commercial world versus just speaking in military jargon. So certifications have a lot of capabilities. Of course, in IT, which was another book that we wrote about, certifications are really important, because they've become very specific that we need to look for somebody with a certain certification and mastery of a certain language or software or a process or framework. So those are, we had hundreds of those. We also had hundreds of project management certifications. But, it was that kind of fun stuff. We talked a little bit about industries. I got a sense from reading all the stories that, you have your outliers, right? But everybody's tried to do everything within a 12 to 18 month period. That seems to be the sweet spot. So, good lessons learned, and try to incorporate that into your own transition as well. So, There was also another section where I kind of talked about and summarized a whole series of vehicles or tools that people found quite helpful, and I itemized those as well. One of those being, for example, Veterati, which is, I believe, the Marines. I could be wrong, but I think someone who was a Marine came up with that concept. And it's a mentoring network, and it is really, really good. I'm a mentor in that program. And, it's kind of like a Match.com, but it's for mentoring purposes, right? So, you get a match and you just start talking to people. So it's really a good program. And I think those types of aggregations that I pulled together can really be helpful besides just reading everybody's independent story. The last thing I wrote up at the end was 16 lessons learned and really the top issues to address. If you could do it again, what would you do differently? Or, what are the lessons learned as far as what everybody brought to the table? And I can tell you the biggest thing is to figure out how to network beyond your current military family. So, that's what I've been talking about on most of these podcasts is figuring out your new network.
Yeah. No, yeah. And that's great. I think the lessons learned piece, that's always I always love that. I think because I love to learn from mistakes. So generally with the lesson, you probably learned it the hard way. So that's like my sweet spot.
Right.
Talk about that. You have a ton of expertise in this industry. So I'm just curious, reading through all of these stories, were there any themes that surprised you maybe, or that you didn't expect to have been there? Or was it all pretty much kind of, given your background and your proximity to this community, what you expected to find?
Well, it made me much more appreciative, and I felt humbled by the military. Every man and woman's story that I read just made me more appreciative of their service and what they did for me to protect ourselves here in the United States. And I just wish I could share that energy and that glory with everybody that I speak to, because it's something that I believe is being diluted in the news nowadays. And that's just a personal opinion. But I mean, these people put their life on the line for us, and for them to walk through what they've endured. Some of them endured much less than others, but some of them endured humongous obstacles and also major health issues. I mean, one guy had a stroke towards the end of his career, but then there were other obstacles, but other triumphs, such as women who got out and were able to, and who had children, who were just having children. And they decided to take 2 more years off and finish their master's degree, and then go out and find a job. I mean, and this woman is out there, and she is just doing great things. But it's amazing the tenacity these people have, because they're faced with these unbelievable situations, and this transition is yet another unbelievable situation that they have to go through. And it's like you've built your life building screws, and now you have to go and work at a cookie factory. And the two sometimes just don't gel at all. And it's amazing their capability to adapt and to get into a new environment and lead as successfully as they do. So I was very humbled, more so than I thought I would be, after reading all the stories.
Yeah, I think you're touching on my sweet spot here, getting the personal stories. But we forget, I mean, I used to work for the Army, and that was one of the biggest things, that we had such a small, we're an all volunteer service now. It almost becomes like this insular community. You know, it kind of perpetuates itself. So service members tend to have kids that join the service. And then I think given the emphasis now against, you know, overseas actions, other than, you know, Syria today, now it's back in the news, but we tend to try to forget that anybody's deploying or that anybody might be serving in the military, but they have, I mean, these incredible stories, and they're doing amazing jobs, and the importance of the Department of Defense and of our military. And we were writing about it, ClearanceJobs every day. The threat vectors are like growing exponentially. So even COVID, everything else is shut down, but our adversaries have ramped up significantly. So the role of the military is incredibly important right now. We can't forget about that as we're chasing other news.
And even just adapting to the logistics of delivering all the vaccines. I mean, it's an incredible logistical nightmare to be part of that process, and yet they get it done. I mean, they're told what to do and they get it done. And you know, it's a silent amazement from my perspective of how these things are accomplished, and yet they do these on a regular basis, and that's why I'm so humbled. And I'm passionate about helping every person that I come across to, if they want some help from me, I'm going to do my best to figure out how to help them.
So again, I usually try to break in. If you've joined us, this is Lindy Kaiser, senior editor of ClearanceJobs, joined by Sandy Lawrence, who's discussing her book, The Transition Veteran. We'll try to kind of wrap up our conversation a bit. I did want to mention, again, we're talking about transition, and you mentioned the certifications piece and the retraining. I feel like terminal leave is big right now, and I feel like I'm seeing this re-energy around making the most of terminal leave. It used to be go have a vacation or go find yourself, which I'm not opposed to. Maybe we need to go find, if you can travel, that would be fantastic. But I'm seeing it more being like, hey, pursue vocational training, get a degree or a certification, pair with an employer. So talk to me about terminal leave. Were there any kind of takeaways from that, from service members, or just even from your putting on your other hat of what you do and how you help service members transition? Talk a bit about terminal leave.
Right. Well, like I said, with the one woman, she just went out and she focused on getting her degree and a certification. In fact, there were one or two of them that, you know, transitioned into doing that full time, and stayed active in either volunteer work or through the VFW, whatever, to promote themselves. Now there's companies I'm finding out that have actual internships that people can, veterans can participate in. So Amazon and Google, I mean, large corporations are offering these types of programs. You have, I believe it's called 4 Block, and you also have DoD Skill Bridge, where they find internships, short-term internships, but while you're still on active duty, and you can pursue those as well. And those are great programs. In fact, that's one of my goals this year, is to really find out more about DoD Skill Bridge and these other types of programs, so that we can share that awareness, either through articles or presentations. But yeah, I think now as people head into retirement, and they've done it with some planning, which means that they have 18 to 24 months, they are looking to take some of those certifications, and many of them are available, you know, courtesy to the military if they take them while they're active duty, or some prep classes or boot camps, those types of things are severely discounted, if not free, for those people. So it's really just a matter of trying to understand who you want to be outside of this, you know, after this 18-month window when you retire, what you want to do, or what you want to be armed with when you start going to interview for jobs in a career field that you might be interested in. But yeah, they are taking a lot of advantage of the terminal leave.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Sandy, for joining us and chatting about the book. It's The Transition Veteran, and it offers 53 stories of service members who have successfully transitioned out of the military, gives their tips. And again, you have that great observation and demographic information at the beginning. Maybe go through so what's one, if I was a service member who was getting ready to transition sitting here, what's one key takeaway that you'd want me to walk away with to kind of help me on that journey?
I think what we need to do is always ask, who you are and what you want to do. And that kind of leads you to the types of networks that you want to connect with. I think it's a great opportunity to become more comfortable with storytelling, telling stories about yourself, or making connections to other people. Whether they're other military people or other people in an industry that you're interested in speaking to. So reaching out to those communities, and those, many of them are on LinkedIn groups. So that's a great place to start.
Great. Well, again, Lindy Kaiser, senior editor. This was our February book club pick, and I'm not going to let spring hit me. So I have preview to our March book club pick you can read more about next week, but next month we're covering The Mission by David W. Brown. So stay tuned for your chance to get a copy. It is good. It looks bigger. It's a good thing March is a long month, but it looks bigger than it is. It has those delightful buttery pages. As an avid bibliophile, I enjoy that part of it. So you can read The Mission with us this month. You can still pick up The Transition Veteran. Again, we gave away about an equal number of ebook copies and physical copies, which again, as a bibliophile, I love to see that people are still enjoying both. So you can get the ebook, you can get the physical copy, and you can read again those great stories of service members who have transitioned out successfully, and then get some great tips and insights from Sandy here, who is doing a great job giving back to that community and helping service members transition. So thank you again, Sandy, and thank you for the folks who tuned in for our live interview.
Yeah, I was going to say our book is buttery as well. So it's
butter. Oh, I read the Kindle version of that, so now I need those buttery soft transition veteran pages.
But yeah, we've made them available to both people. So
it's good. Power is having options. So whether you're ebook or physical book copy kind of a person, you can read The Transition Veteran and get the tips that you need.
Yeah, well, thank you, Lindy. Thanks, Jillian. Really appreciate the opportunity to share this book out to others who might be interested in reading up on how people have done it before them.
Great. Thank you, Sandy.
Hey.